question of what happens to us after we die has been a question that has confused us for centuries. Do we move on to some other realm, or do we just fade away into darkness? Or, as I and many thousands of others believe, can we come back in spirit to a place we loved when alive and want to remain there? But obviously, none of us know what happens in the minutes after death until it's our turn. Do we go somewhere first to learn how to be a spirit, like some sort of learning centre? Or can we just arrive at the place we want to be? Back in the 19th century, one man decided he was going to answer the question once and for all and prove that we go on to another realm. The only thing was, he had to die to do it. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, spiritualism was taking the United States by storm, largely due to the Civil War and World War I. With so many dying, there was the need to hold on to the belief that death was not the end, and that our loved ones lived on somewhere after their body had died. Spiritualism was firm in the belief that there was some sort of afterlife and that we can communicate with those who have passed away. Due to this, spirit mediums, psychics, seances and the Ouija board were extremely popular at that time, and although there were certainly many fakes, hoaxers and scammers, a large proportion of society fully believed in life after death, and those who had passed away can reach out into the living world and communicate with us. One who believed it a little more than most was a man by the name of Thomas Lynn Bradford. Thomas was for the most part a pretty normal man living in Detroit, Michigan. He was a widower and a sort of jack of all trades, doing odd jobs that ranged from carpentry to electrical work, and he even did a bit of acting. His life was mostly uneventful until the early 1920s, when he began to get an intense interest in spiritualism and the idea of contacting his deceased wife. It's unclear just what triggered this interest, but by all accounts he became absolutely obsessed with the idea of life after death. He attended seances regularly, gave lectures and wrote numerous articles and essays on spiritualism, the occult and psychic phenomena, even claiming that he himself was psychic. In January of 1921, he decided to take his interest to the next level, and he put an advert in the newspaper requesting an assistant to help him with an experiment he wanted to carry out in spiritualistic science. Not long after he placed the advert, a woman by the name of Ruth Duran contacted him. She was a widow and a respected writer and lecturer from a prominent Detroit family. Interestingly, Ruth was not a spiritualist, medium or psychic, and in fact wasn't even sure at the time that she believed in such things. She told Thomas that she answered the ad out of pure curiosity and the need to know more about something she knew very little about. When she met Thomas and spoke in length to him about the subject, she was soon taken in by the world of spiritualism and felt a strong connection, almost infatuation with him. Due to how she felt about Thomas was the main reason why she didn't turn round and run out of the door when she found out what kind of experiment he had in mind. He explained that there was only one way to prove that there was life after death. First, there had to be two minds that had a strong connection with each other, and one of these minds had to leave. In other words, he meant he had to die to prove he could come back in spirit. Thomas believed that the only way to truly prove the afterlife once and for all was to take his own life and then come back to communicate with Ruth. Something she seemed to be surprisingly okay with, which was strange coming from someone who claimed to have no prior interest in spiritualism. In his mind, he was to be a true pioneer in the realm of life after death, and of course science itself. He was confident that he could prove there was an afterlife, which would be the greatest scientific discovery in the history of mankind. To him, he wasn't just dying, he was going on a great adventure. He must have really sold Ruth the idea, because she agreed that on his death she would hold a lone vigil, then have a seance to wait for his messages, which he would dictate to her from the other side. He absolutely meant to go through with it, because on February the 5th, 1921, Thomas closed his bedroom door, blew out the pilot light on his heater, turned up the gas, then lay down on his bed. His death didn't take long. He quietly went to sleep and never woke up. The police would find a typed message still sitting in his typewriter which read, "And it is through scientific facts that I propose to demonstrate clearly the phenomena of spirits and prove that all the phenomena is outside the domain of the supernatural." An investigation was carried out, and although Ruth was at first seen as highly suspicious, or at the very least supported the death, which was the truth, it was ruled that Thomas had taken his own life, and she would claim that she had not seriously believed he would actually go through with it. With no evidence of any wrongdoing, Ruth was never charged with a crime in relation to Thomas's death. In the meantime, the news of the death was in all the major papers. As with most media reports, things were changed to make the case look more sensational than it really was. What a lot of people were thinking at the time was not what a tragedy it all was, but rather whether Thomas would follow through with his promise and bring a message back from the other side. Ruth did her part. She kept constant vigils and held regular seances, but there was no response from Thomas. As Ruth kept trying to do her part, a psychic medium by the name of Lulu Mack came forward to claim that she had been contacted by Thomas. He had called out to her during a seance and said his name. Lulu, who claimed she had never heard of Thomas before, explained that he had been strenuously trying to communicate with her from the other side, but his spirit was weak due to him taking his own life. She said he was only in the first sphere of the heavenly constellation, so she was just getting garbled messages from him, and she would not be able to fully understand what he was saying until his spirit strengthened. Lulu explained that he needed to reach different heavenly altitudes, a process that could take years. Her story was a bit suspect, since it seemed impossible that a spiritualist would not have heard of Thomas's case, which had been splashed all over the news. So her claims were met with some scepticism from those who thought she was just looking for publicity. Ruth claimed that she was visited by a presence in the room with her, who she believed was Thomas. She said that although he was too weak to effectively communicate, she had the strong image of 9 p.m. imprinted into her mind, which she took as being from Thomas. She came to the conclusion that he meant to try and break through the veil at that time, and that if she could summon support from the spiritualist community, they could accelerate the return of his spirit. So she contacted as many spiritualists as she could and told them to focus on Thomas at 9 p.m. When the time came, Ruth and a group of spiritualists held a seance, during which they allegedly all felt Thomas's presence and the lights went out. Ruth then claimed that she was getting a message from Thomas and dictated it. He said, "I am the professor who speaks to you from the beyond. I have broken through the veil. The help of the living has greatly assisted me. I simply went to sleep. I woke up and at first didn't realise that I had passed on. I find no great change apparent. I expected things to be much different. They are not. Human forms are retained in outline but not in the physical. I have not travelled far. I am still in much darkness. I see many people. They appear natural. There is a lightness of responsibility here, unlike in life. One feels full of rapture and happiness. Persons of like nature associate. I am associated with other investigators. I do not repent my act. My present plane is but the first series. I am still investigating the future planes, regarding which we in this plane are ignorant, as are the earthly beings of the life just beyond human life." After that, Thomas's spirit faded away and was not heard from again. Some say this is not ultimate proof Thomas was able to communicate with Ruth. She could have made the whole thing up. But why would she do that? She was a skeptic looking to have her mind changed. She wanted proof of the afterlife. Skeptics do not fake communication, as that would go against what they are trying to prove beyond doubt. But I guess no one will ever know the truth. Whatever the answer is, it remains a very strange case, and hopefully one that will never be repeated by someone who is desperate to prove there is life after death. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.